Guo Shangsui is 89 years old and lives in a small village called Xingsa in Dongguan, China. One day, Suiba's dog ran off to the other side of a nearby pond. We thought it was dangerous for Suiba to go looking for the dog on his own, so I was sent to keep an eye on him. It was comical how quickly these roles were reversed. We had to hike around the pond, maneuvering around mud, prickly plant life, and wild dogs. At one point, one of my feet sank a foot deep in mud and I almost fell over trying to pull it out. Suiba steadied me and helped pull my foot out. He then motioned that I hold onto him and wash my leg off in the pond. As our journey continued, there were many more instances where I lost my balance or couldn't pull myself up a hill on our path. Suiba would steady me or help pull me up. Here was an 89-year-old man who I was sent to take care of, protecting me. Every time I would topple, he would laugh and help me back up. Suiba was once afflicted with leprosy, also known as Hansen's disease. Once diagnosed with the illness, Suiba was quarantined in Xingsa along with several other patients. Removed from his friends and family, Suiba has spent the majority of his life in isolation. At age 89, Suiba has been cured of leprosy for many years now. However, his 60-year-old son still refuses to accept him. Every year on his son's birthday, Suiba leaves Xingsa to try to find his son. Every year, his son avoids him. Hansen's disease is a bacterial disease that has been around since the start of human civilization. Although over 99% of people have a natural immunity to it, the disease has been present on all 7 continents. Leprosy primarily affects the skin, eyes, and nervous system. Because of the nerve damage, patients often do not notice the first manifestations of the disease. As the infection progresses, festering sores appear on the patient's skin, leading to characteristic deformities in the limbs and face. As a result of these physical deformities, those infected are often feared and ostracized from their communities. In the 1980s, an effective treatment was developed for leprosy, but nerve damage is permanent, and the injuries and deformities already suffered cannot be cured. There are now roughly 1 to 2 million people worldwide living with these after effects. 100,000 of them are located in China. China's method of disease control was to isolate people affected by leprosy in special villages, composed of a medical ward and a residential area. When the treatment was developed and introduced to the villages, the medical wards eventually closed down. Only the residential areas remain, now populated by cured patients. However, prejudices within the Chinese population have not changed. The patients are still discriminated against for their deformities. Thus, many of these people now live isolated in these former quarantine villages, where they are only given a small subsidy from the local government and struggle to pay for basic needs, let alone medical necessities.
In the summer of 2012, Stephanie and I went to China as representatives of Global Neighbors, a student group at Swarthmore College that works to prevent the marginalization and discrimination of others based on physical or mental disabilities. There we partnered with Joy in Action, or JA, a non-profit organization that works with people in these Hansen's disease recovery villages.
家是那个麻风病康复中开展工作营这个活动，然后通过工作营改善麻风病康复中的生活条件，像盖房子啊、饮水，还有输入之类的生活条件。过程中一两个星期的时间里面，我们志愿者和麻风病康复者可以建立人和人的关系。首先是志愿者麻风病康复者这种关系，但是慢慢的变成太郎和监管者之类的人和人的关系，然后在有了这个人和人的纽带之后，我们可以学会向村民学会人生是什么之类的。
We worked with Joy in Action for 10 weeks, visiting different recovery villages throughout southern China. There we witnessed pain and sadness, but also hope, perseverance, and compassion on a level that we had never seen before. The people we met in the villages touched us with their stories and inspired us with their kindness and grace in the face of adversity. This video is a snapshot of the places we went and the people we found there. Luobo is one of 23 villagers living in Huadu, a recovery village on the outskirts of Guangzhou. Though Luobo is now blind, and his right hand has been rendered unusable by the disease, he still loves to play the keyboard. He would often ask us to sing or play his favorite songs with him. In Huadu, Colin and I also became especially close to a villager named Tongmeng Run. One early morning, Tumba beckoned for me to come to his room and asked if I had eaten yet. He said he wanted to cook breakfast for me. Tumba's hands are in a permanently clenched position due to the nerve damage left behind by Hansen's disease, so he struggled a bit with some of the kitchen tools. However, when I tried to help him, he said, "You are my guest," so I let him cook. When he finished, we ate together in his room. As we were eating, I tried to help him put food onto his dish, but he asked me, "Aren't you afraid that it's dirty?" I responded with, "Why would I be afraid?" and added more food onto his dish. After a few minutes of eating silently together, he smiled and told me, "I'm so happy to have met you."
At Huadu, we met a woman we came to call Tang Po Po. Tang Po Po's hands and feet have been affected by Hansen's disease, leaving behind fingers and toes that are frail and disfigured. Now in her 80s, she is completely blind, relying on her sense of touch to navigate the walkways of the building where she lives. The first time I met her, she was sitting in the village entranceway where the villagers often relaxed. As soon as I introduced myself, she told me to wait, and then began to walk slowly back to her room. I waited where I was, and eventually she made her way back, carrying with her 3 packets of noodles out of her own personal supply. These she gave to me, telling me that they were for myself and my friends.
We soon learned that Tangpopo's first instinct is always to think of others. When you visit her, she reaches out with her hands to find you. As she gently grasps your hands, she'll greet you with "Sendai Ginho," which means wishing you good health, along with other words of kindness like wishing you good luck in your studies. She always tells us to be careful while traveling in China, and always asks if we've had enough food.
Later on, Tang Po Po told us her story. When she was a teenager, Tang Po Po became engaged. Her fiancé was very ill, and at the time there was a belief that the happiness and good fortune of marriage could cure him. But 3 days after their wedding, Tang Po Po's husband passed away. Resented by both his and her own family, Tang Po Po had to carry the responsibility for her husband's death. Soon after, Tang Po Po would contract Hansen's disease and be sent to Huadu. Tang Po Po never married again, and she never forgave herself for not being able to save her husband.
In Guangxi province there is a recovery village called Longgang. It is far from the nearest city, surrounded by mountains and farmlands. There I met a villager that I ended up referring to as Yuana Agong because of his many trips to Vietnam. He was one of the major reasons why Longgang seemed like a home away from home for me. Every day he would peek out of his room and check if I was around. If so, he would yell, "Pei Ling," and hand me a banana or some water. After lunch sometimes, I would go to see him, and he would always leave some sort of snack or food for me, and laugh at me for eating so much. While we were talking one day, it came up that I had always wanted to make a hulugua container to carry around like in the storybooks. On the last day before we left Longgang, Yuana Agong cut a hulugua for me. He said, "This isn't ripe enough for you to make a gourd out of it, so you can eat this one. I'll cut another one out, dry it, and leave it here for you when you come back." It pained me to respond with, "I don't know when I'll be back." But he just smiled and said, "If you do, it will be here for you."
When you first hear about the people in these villages, you might feel that the appropriate thing to do is to pity them. This is what I thought when I first came to Huazhu. But as I spent more time with the villagers, hearing their stories and witnessing their strength, I realized that pity wasn't the appropriate emotion. The people we encountered at the villages had every right to be bitter and upset at the world, yet everyone we met greeted us with open arms, taking us in like family. This unconditional kindness, in spite of the hardships they faced, was both humbling and inspiring, and taught Stephanie and I more than we could ever have expected before coming here. The villagers were all overjoyed to have us spend time with them, but in the end, I think that we were just as lucky to have had the opportunity to meet them.
Going to these villages has been a lesson to me on the true meaning of creating ties with people. With each departure from each village, it feels as if I am leaving a part of myself there, a part of myself that I have a responsibility to. But I also feel that in place of that part of me that I've left, the villagers have left something of their own in my heart, something that I also have to nourish. Though I know it will be difficult for me to come back, I believe that it may be impossible not to.
Mình thôi rồi á, mình thì kinh đông thì đi ông con của tôi. Hoa sơn mà. Hưng hối sơn là. Khai sơn là.